really like my quick math thing. How has my technique changed over the years? Well, that's a good question. I use a lot of what I started learning out. Well, no, that's not true. When I first started learning on my own, I used I was mainly just kind of playing in layers because layers is are really easy to use and make everything super editable and changeable always. So that is that's how I actually really started. When I first got Photoshop, I just played with layers once it I learned about them. It took me a while to learn about them. A buddy of mine is actually, "Oh, bro, use layers." I'm like, "I don't know what that is." So started using layers, and that was pretty cool, and I liked it. And once I started working at Antarctic Press and was working as part of Guru Effects, they taught me about channels, and and I still use layers, but I save layers for effects. And channels have mostly become, I've got my line art channel right here. I save my flats on a channel, and then I'll save specific selections in other channels. And that was at first mostly for going easy on the computers because it was almost 20 years ago, or it was 20 years ago, and computers aren't nearly as powerful as they are now. And adding layers adds a lot more to your file size, which can bog down a computer if it doesn't have the power. So I rolled into channels, and then just from there it just became keyboard shortcuts. Like I use keyboard shortcuts all the time. That became a big kind of everything that I do is keyboard shortcuts, and that's and just stumble across like one thing I didn't used to do, because obviously, you can look at my layers palette in the bottom right. Uh, I mostly I color on the background, but one thing I've changed recently, as opposed to constantly coming in and selecting each, say I'm doing these trees, I want to color these trees. I'd come in and I'd start coloring, and that would be here on the background layer, like you see, and that's how I used to always do it. But at some point, I don't remember, a few years ago, I came to the realization uh, I could actually move what I had selected into a layer for itself. Uh, I'm on a PC, so I mean that's just Control J. If you see in the bottom right, I'll do it again. You see there's a so that what I had selection were these tree branches, and so now those tree branches are in a layer by itself. Benefits having flat, so I can just magic wand it. And what I'll do is then I'll preserve transparency, which is this little checkerboard on the palette, or the backslash question mark key. That turns it on and off. And what that lets me do is I can just color. I don't have to worry about selections or anything. It just lets me go. And that was not a big game changer, but it helped eliminate a little bit of a extra step in my process. Is so I'll sit here and I will work specifically on this selection layer that I just recently made, and I'll do all my base rendering, and get what I need done, you know, just real quick. And then once I'm finished with it, I'll then merge that layer back down to the background. But I still always have my flats channel, so whenever I need it, I can just go back and work on that spot. But it just kept me going because I keep isolating specific parts. So if I want to work on this branch in the past, to keep from doing everything, I'd have to deselect here, and I have to deselect all these different spots. Whereas isolating that into a layer while I work on it just save me a little bit extra step and time. I mean, when I used to have interns at the old office, I'd keep trying to train them in shortcuts and how to get through stuff quicker because so much of what we do in comics is time sensitive, and it sounds ludicrous, but I kind of came up with this mantra where it's seconds equal minutes, minutes equal hours, hours equal days, and when everything's on a deadline, seconds add up, especially with all the different stuff that you're doing and all the different selections that you're making constantly. That this just really kind of made things a heck of a lot easier for me, quicker. It's just a little minor change and that's kind of been my biggest aha in the last several years. So, but yeah, no, that's a good question. But everybody, and it's all going to change depending on the your own technique, whatever works for you, because what works for me may not work for you. That's the cool thing about Photoshop is there's multiple ways to do everything. And that was one thing I really liked about having studio uh studio mates was we were all be doing stuff, whether or not they're we had several other colorists in the studio, or but even just the artists were jack of all trades. So I mean they were just as capable or even more so in Photoshop than I was and others. So I mean we could always go in and be like, oh man, check what I found, and kind of share stuff with each other. You know, y- that that prompted a lot of growth. Having that camaraderie and instant kind of feedback, and just like, oh man, check this out, and sometimes they knew that already what you just discovered. It's like, oh man, why didn't you ever tell me? And like, yeah, but check this out, and that would lead them to show you something else. So that's probably the only big thing I miss about working in a studio is moments like that. That was a lot of fun. That's kind of when we all got to you know geek out on craft as opposed to just the inane banter we always had about Star Wars and Star Trek. All that we to this day will have that same conversation when we get together. It's both funny and sad. Just gonna the edges of these branches, like hey, it's getting hit by that sun that's setting. The big cheese here is where the real emphasis is. So yeah, I remember when one of my first San Diego's Comic Cons I went to, I had the pleasure of meeting Chris Cox, who is one of the developers and programmers and creators for Photoshop, which is the program I use. And that was one thing that was always kind of fun for me when we'd go to San Diego, and every year I'd get to see Chris, and so we just kind of talk Photoshop and stuff. If he saw me brightness contrast like I just did, he would be mad at me. He's like, "You're not supposed to do that." And I'm like, "Well, it works, so I do it." And that's the funny thing. I forget. I think it was all about the color balance and the black levels, the K levels. So when it comes to print, but there's a lot more people better than me and even not better than me that are a little more anal retentive about color levels and stuff. I didn't get quite that far into it. I dipped my toe into it. At the end of the day, stuff prints well or doesn't print well, and there's only so much I have control of, and even when I can do everything right, it doesn't always print well. So, and after multiple bad print jobs that, because you could go to a comic store and look at the same book on the rack if they have multiple copies, and each book will look slightly different if you a lot of times because if the printer starts running out of ink, colors will start shifting. My creator owned comic Sasquanaut or no Sky Sharks I put out. I remember when I got issue 5 and opened a box from the printer in China, and the cover of issue 5 is a sky, like the whole thing's a sky. The dude's like free falling parachuting through the sky, and it wasn't a super blue sky. It was kind of similar to this tone here, this kind of light blue, little bit of purple in it. And man, the printer, I guess they were running out of ink because every book in that box, it was a box of 100 comics. Every book was just slightly different in color on the cover, and it's just there's only so much you can control with print. So at a long time ago, I kind of stopped worrying about it a little. Maybe not enough. I don't know, but I decided not to kill myself over it. Least favorite part about coloring, probably the flats, just because it's just kind of tedious, which is why when I can, I try to hire out people to do it for me, so I can skip that part because the coloring part's a lot more fun to me than the flatting. But especially when you get a really dense page with lots and lots of stuff, I don't I don't particularly want to flat that, but you do what you got to. Okay, I want to play with some God rays because that part's always fun. And I can get to play with the new brushes some more that I want to play with. See, I think I might need to make these brushes. I don't know. I don't know if I got this because I got these cool brushes that I found that have been super, but they're all at an angle. They're not quite the radial I need, but I might be able to fake them a little bit. We're gonna try this. I don't know if this is gonna work. Not sure if this is gonna work, but that's pretty boss. Yeah. All right, that's pretty cool. See, I got a little sloppy and I didn't strain my glows. when you start doing special effects, it's kind of what I like to call instant effort. They can make stuff look pretty good pretty quick without doing too much. See, I do want to play with it because I need some God rays going this direction. But I don't want them to be ridiculous. Nah, I like that as is. That's fine. It's fine. Probably just pump this glow a little bit more. Kind of radioactive, man. That's yeah, that'll work. That will work. And we're gonna go back to this is his forest throne that grew up out of the ground of previous pages. You see here on this page. So obviously I didn't really do a brown or flat brown, so now I gotta go in here and start kind of giving this sucker some life. Let me do I want maybe this rough just kind of want to break up the color. This won't be the final say so. Just want to there's lots of different hues and variations in colors out in nature, so that's kind of what I'm aiming for on this or in the vines here. And again, I've actually got my selections I previously drew to kind of eliminate some work, and it's a dual light source, so I mean I've got a stronger, more intense edge. Let's see, so that way these parts of the arm rails and the edge of the throne that are going to be directed more towards the sun, I'm going to have those be brighter, make those pop. And I don't need we'll just and a bit of this other stuff. I want to go back to my one of my texture brushes because I don't want it to just be flatness, because I want these guys to look pretty gnarly and cool. This is probably going to shift a little more once I want to get him done and figured out, because he's going to help kind of pull this bit together. But where is okay, so I'm going to go in and add a bit more shadows in here. Just going to brush them in. I'm just going to have him cast this big shadow here. Like most of that area is going to be dark. Most of these are kind of overlapping on top of each other, so they can be pushed back. Just kind of Have this arm casting shadows over here too. I've got another texture brush. Bring in. Oh, if this is gonna work. There. I think that looks a bit all right. Kind of mossy and stuff. It'll work. Oh, see here, I messed up my flat because I did that as a hand, and that's actually part of the tree back here. Whoops. I'm actually just gonna kind of this. Okay. Since I'm basing most of that on these previous pages, I'm gonna eliminate just a touch of my guesswork here and start my tones. I can do all those. Works. So a lot of this, what's happening on this page, not to give too much away, but essentially this page is supposed to be showcasing passage of time, and not just the seasons like I wrote on here, but it's years. So we're gonna starts kind of like where he was and where he is in this first panel. The first 3 pages. It's kind of into that. Then we get into this next panel. We're gonna go more autumn, kind of gold colors and reds. Basically, what's happening is Sasquanaut's kind of musing on his time in life and just enjoying his ruling of the forest. But he's been on these crazy space adventures, and he realizes maybe this isn't as awesome as it once was, because now he's done and seeing all this incredible stuff. So he starts off, he's pretty happy. You can see his facial expressions where he's like, "Hey, I'm a happy guy. I'm home. I'm where I want to be." And then you know he's still happy, but he's a little less. You don't see a gap in his teeth like you do here. It's like, and then as time gets on, winter comes. A few years down, less happy. He's not smiling anymore. You see the plants are fading away, but even then, you start, instead of these bushes and stuff that you see in the mountains that were there, the mountains aren't the same. They're craggly, and you see these alien life pod plant things come up, and the more discontent he gets, the more he realizes that he's not here with Earth. He's seeing what's actually out here, and it's nothing with see. But I started putting in his streaks in his hair and beard, but he's getting older, so I actually stopped doing that because I'm really kind of considering by the time we get to the end, he's going to be really, really gray and just grizzled and desaturated. He's not going to be the bright brown and orange that he is to begin with, because he gets older, he gets you know less less enthralled with his current state. He realizes this isn't really what he wants. more. Again, going back to my previously drawn selections and highlights. Again, I'm just going to use the work I've already done right now, just because figured it out once. I don't particularly need to figure it out again from scratch. See, that's teeth. Fix my channel there, so I got the flats correct. Actually, both these just as always, the goal is to kind of make him pop, but I also want it to be dramatic lighting. So that's why I've done this kind of secondary lighting. So his he's gonna have this sharp edge light that's just gonna pop off the screen, and that's coming from the blazing setting sun over here. But then got, again, going back to my previously established work, just so I don't have to figure everything out from scratch. See, no, that's not the right color. That's not what I want. I probably need to figure this one out. So I got him with secondary light. So I'm gonna go give my and I think I'm gonna pull probably from gray green, purpley green as the secondary. This is gonna be one of those pages that takes longer just because every single panel is different. So whereas fortunately the last few streams I managed to color the whole page during the stream. This isn't going to be one of those because tired today, and it's going to require a little more brain power than I probably have in me right now. Finish, but we can put a good dent in it. That sucker. Oops, it's not what I wanted. Not to derail a little too much, but that's part of the reason I went in and did these pre-selections on all these pages, because you can see even here in these, every panel I've shifted the light source. I mean, you see it's got the edge light with the secondary. This one is more just kind of a overhead ambient light, you know, or directional. This one's more straight overhead, and this one we get back more into the edge light with the secondary, just to try and help differentiate each part of each panel and advance that story some more. And with, especially like when he gets in these older parts and I'm trying to go gray or whatever, it'll be easier to make him go gray because I can do that highlight real strong, like up here in that first panel. I can do the strong highlight. And the others I can be a little more subdued, be a little lower contrast, a little more desaturated to get that aged look I want to accomplish. And that also comes in the from his younger self to these when he's got more wrinkles. There's a lot more lines in his face when he's older, whereas it's fairly all connected and it's not broken up. So little things like that will will help create the illusion of the aging look, hopefully. I'm really excited for this issue. I think this is going to be a really, really great looking issue. I've been looking forward to it and dreading it since I first wrote this issue because I knew it's going to be a really cool looking, but I know it's going to be really hard. But I think if I can just stick to it and pull and finish it, I think it'll be good for me. It'll be good for the story. So I'm looking forward to having it done. I'm not so much looking forward to doing it, if that makes sense. I'm gonna go return to my white teeth because I want that to stand out. See, I think my trees are still a little too dark. They're blending too much with the throne here. I don't really want to mess with my rendering too much, but I'm gonna start ever so slightly. I'm gonna do a radial grad on transparency with screen just to put a little more ambient color. Dude, I'm kind of okay with this area. I think I'm good with that. This area where I'm butting up against button up against the forest throne. I probably need to just pump these edge lights on this even more. Probably, yeah. I think overall I'll probably pump the atmospherics just a touch more. Red. I'm gonna switch over to lighten as opposed to screen because I don't want to screw up the glow I already have. I just want to grow it. And I'm going real slight. That's 10%. Another 10. I think what I'm gonna do to deselect him, this foreground bit. I think once I have him deselected and I do a little bit more atmospherics, that'll wrap up this first pan. Get me where I need to. Probably should have used my wand. Oh well. I don't know if that would have been faster on it or not, but again, just, now it's just hitting the background only here. Put a little more dim, bluish shadows. Bit of a forward, this arm forward. Just kind of a little bit of a cast shadow. Doesn't need to be too much, but got a little bit. Pump these just a touch more. A little too. Maybe I'll put a little green just to separate it out, tree a little more. You can see I work at zoomed out pretty far usually because the monitor I use is once I'm zoomed out of it, this is pretty comparable to the size of a typical comic. I don't have a comic on my desk right now, do I? Yeah, yeah. So just put up my screen. That's pretty much the print size it's going to be. It's actually a little bit bigger. So if I can live with where it looks here, how it's going, that'll be all right. You know, the more I get, I mean, I could come in, zoom in, and work on this stuff for hours and hours and just play and get lost, and most of that will never print. Like it's just physically impossible for a printer to replicate it. So that's not a good use of time. Like I mean, if you've got the time, you're just doing it as an exercise. Great. I mean, there's value in it. You can learn some things doing it, but ultimately, you'll be doing a lot of work. Really, nobody's ever going to see. I mean, technically, they could potentially see it if they buy a digital copy, like on Comixology or something like that, and can zoom in. I mean, you see a bunch of detail then, but your average comic viewer isn't going to do that. So defeats the purpose. We're I better at my scripting where I could get my finalized dialogue done more or less in my script as opposed to doing more rewrites. I would probably try and get everything lettered first because if I could do that, then I would know when and where not to invest time because it'd be covered by a balloon. Because there's been multiple instances when I'm working on a book, not even mine, just general kind of freelance job. I'll do some element in the background and that looks really cool. And lo and behold, when comes out and I see it, all the work I put in on thing I like really well gets covered by a word balloon, and then nobody sees it. That's a little heartbreaking. So the name of the game is know where to put your energy. If you see that, it just kind of makes his glows his edge light a little more radioactive, pops him, makes him look good. Yeah, I like this page, which is why I end up doing more and more. Like if this were kind of another job, I would probably move on just for the sake of time and getting into the next thing. But this is mine, and I like this page, so I go give it that extra bit of love because I can and I want to. You can't always do that, so it's fun when you I said, I think this will be a really special issue, visually, especially. I like the story too, but the story was a good vehicle to do a lot of things I just kind of wanted to do, like color wise. Not so much wanted to do, wanted to see color wise. I still don't particularly want to color it, but I want to see it colored. If I could afford have somebody else do it and they could do what I see in my head, I would have done that. I would have done that, but that is so. What I've done there is I've colorized the black lines of the trees here, and just to again help push them further back. I really should move on. That needs to be done. Okay, so panel one done. Where are we at? It took me an hour to do that panel. The last couple pages I did like the whole page in 2 hours, so it's going to take some time. Of course, I had a little bit better rhythm then. I've been splitting my attention between making graphics and doing stuff to get the Kickstarter prepared. It's launching in 2 weeks. I've been putting a lot of time in that, going over the lettering, which is looking really good. But yeah, I've not been coloring quite as much as I was with the last few weeks, so I don't think I have the same rhythm. It's part why it's taken longer. I may go straight up full Bob Ross, and I may just do a really bright yellow sky, like stupidly bright, just cause that way go. So I said autumn, so I want to do more browns and reds and oranges and yellows. It's just kind of a base.